Hey, what's up, headhunters and executive recruiters? This is DSP, David Stephen Patterson, and today you're going to learn how to implement the 12-week year. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, I run a Facebook group called the Headhunter and Executive Recruiter Community, or hashtag HERC for short. So if you haven't joined, I would join. Now, as of the time of this filming, we are so close to 6,000 members, and it's growing. Largely agency recruiters, headhunters, executive recruiters. We have some corporate recruiters in there as well. So with that said, it's full of recruiters helping each other, posting questions, giving advice. I have a lot of free training in there. And specifically, this lesson that you're about to see is the third in what I call the Zero to Hero Recruiter Productivity Training Series. Because what I found is that we are, as recruiters, we're awash in information on scripts and how to perform a job intake or search intake, or how to do a candidate debrief or a prep. You know, we don't need any more training in those areas. We have enough, okay? But the problem is that not that we don't have enough knowledge, is that we don't execute on it. We don't implement it, and that really falls in productivity. We're just not productive, unfortunately, and we don't know how to be productive. Most people have no idea how to be productive. And I know a lot of trainers will put out training on how to plan your day, right? Plan the end of the day for the next day. Have 100 calls planned, and then have your money calls planned at the beginning of the day. All those things make sense. But there's a reason why most recruiters don't really truly plan, and they're not really truly productive, is because no matter how many times they see the same damn training, right, from all these other trainers, all saying the same shit, at the end of the day, it never sticks. So what I'm trying to do with this training series is give you really a much deeper view into productivity. And yes, I planned the end of the day for the next day, planned your 100 calls, great, that's all well and good. Doesn't mean anything unless you have a personal productivity system, a solid system in place that you can trust. So that's what we're doing here. In session 1, I really gave more of a high-level overview of vision and be able to figure out what areas of responsibility you have in your life, because productivity really encompasses everything: career, your job, your relationships, your social life, your kids, health, fun and recreation. Really, you have to integrate all those things into one cohesive whole. So in that first session, and that session is also available here on this YouTube channel, I'll put the link down below. I'll also probably do one of those little links up here as well. I talk about that. In the second session, I go low, right? I talked high level in that lesson. And then in the second lesson, I talked for a day-to-day task management system. For most of us, we have dozens or even hundreds of tasks that we have to accomplish each and every day. And it's so stressful trying to figure out and keep track of everything. So in that lesson, I talk about a project management methodology I use called GTD. And I break it down on how to implement it into your own workflow. And in essence, what it does is it creates a task management system that you can trust and rely on. So with that in place, in this lesson, I bring everything together. I show you how to take that big vision that you can create for yourself, and then using this day-to-day project management system, and to really marry the two, and to have your vision flow right into your day-to-day. And to do that is the 12-week year, which comes from the book of the same name by Brian Moran. And that's what I talk about in this lesson. That brings everything together. So I will be including additional lessons on in the future on other productivity tools, as well as diet and how that affects productivity, sleep, all these other productivity areas as well, and how to be a productive parent and all those things. But in terms of a productivity system, these 3 sessions, session 1, session 2, and session 3, should form the backbone of your entire productivity system. All right. So with that said, let's get right into it. Enjoy today's lesson. Hey guys, welcome to the Zero to Hero training series on recruiter productivity, Tom Cruise edition. Now, for those folks who have seen the prior Zero to Hero training series, on the first one we spoke about more of a high level overview on productivity, what productivity means. We talk about your why, your vision, etc. And we also talk about the 6 horizons of your life and what it means from a planning perspective. In our second session, we went down to the granular level and we really focused on how to manage your day-to-day, your tasks, etc. In today's lesson, we're going to bring all that together in the 12-week year. But before I do that, you guys, you have to indulge me on something, because for many of you folks you may not know, although you're probably getting an idea now, I am a huge Tom Cruise fan. And I'm a huge Top Gun fan. I saw Top Gun when it came out in theaters. I was 10 years old. I thought it was the greatest movie of all time back then. I still hold that opinion today. And turns out we have a sequel coming out next year, Top Gun Maverick. When I first heard about it coming out, I was a little bit skeptical, because usually when they do either reboots or sequels of beloved movies, they usually screw it up. Think Star Wars. But after seeing this preview, I can't tell you the last time I've been more excited about a movie. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to play that preview right now, because again, I think you guys can indulge me.
+30 years of service. Combat medals, citations. Only man to shoot down 3 enemy planes in the last 40 years. Yet you can't get a promotion, you won't retire. Despite your best efforts, you refuse to die. You should be at least a 2-star admiral by now. Yet here you are. Captain. Why is that?
It's one of life's mysteries, sir.
The end is inevitable, Maverick. Your kind is headed for extinction.
Maybe so, sir. But not today.
Oh, hot damn, hot damn, hot damn. Love America. Anyway, guys, sorry about that, but like I said, you got to indulge me. Anyway, with that said, I am super excited about that movie coming out. But let's get on to business, and that is making you productive. Now, here, I'm going to start off by talking about how most people approach productivity. And they really approach it all wrong because we all want to create our vision of the future. We all have these big audacious dreams, and at the beginning of the year, we want to join the gym, we want to find a new job, we want to increase our billings, we want to start our business, we want to give up drinking, we want to fix our relationships, what have you. And so making plans is fun. At the beginning of the year, we sit. Well, sorry, rather maybe Christmas time, right? But we sit down and we write down all of our goals and our dreams and basically our wish list for our life, right? And we probably create a business plan if you work for a search firm, and your manager will likely have you write out what your plan is for the year, and all that. And all that is awesome and fantastic and feels really great and triggers those dopamine synapses in your head. But we get into the year and we feel like, middle of the year, we feel like Sisyphus, pushing that rock up the mountain over and over and over again. We can't see an end in sight, and it's really demoralizing. And it's why at the beginning of the year we see the gyms completely full. However, a month or two in, they are quite literally ghost towns. That is actually one of the big reasons why so many of these gyms can sell these memberships for $10 or $20 a month, because they know very few people actually will go to the gym. But at the beginning of the year, they sell these things, and unfortunately, people don't show up, and it's how these gyms stay in business. Because if everybody did show up, they wouldn't be able to handle that type of traffic. They wouldn't have the capacity. So even the big national gyms bet on this fact. Okay, and for a lot of us, then we have to realize, we've got these big audacious goals. And we have this big elephant in front of us that we have to try to eat, as they say. And of course, as the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you do so one bite at a time. But the question becomes, okay, well, how do I chunk that up? Because for most of us, we don't know how. And this is where we give up. And year after year after year after year, until at some point, you're just fed the fuck up. And you say, enough is enough. And that's when you really have to dig in and find that emotional leverage to change something, to do something different. And that's actually what we spoke about in our first session. Our very first session, I talked a lot about mindset. I talked a lot about the concept of resistance, and what that resistance is. Because if you need to fight that enemy, you need to be able to find the enemy. And we spoke about why it's literally life or death that you master it. It's your life. And if you don't master that, you will be laying on your deathbed thinking or wondering, what could have been, right? So I would recommend buying The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, another great book, which I did not mention in that last session, but I would go by it as well. The Obstacle is the Way, which is really a book on Stoicism. Really, both are books on Stoicism. That they just take things a little bit differently. But I would say if you were to choose one, go with The War of Art first. And then, and of course, Stephen Pressfield has a sequel called Turning Pro. So go read those, and as well as read The Obstacle is the Way. Now, in that lesson, we also talked about vision, mission, principles. And we will touch on why a vision is so important, because for many folks, and I was and that would include me as well, for many years, I thought vision was nothing more than just rah, rah fluff. It's actually quite important once you realize how to actually use it as a tool. So, we also spoke about the myth of work-life balance, which we'll also be talking about a bit more today, and what that means practically in terms of you creating this plan for yourself in this 12-week year. And we also talked about dealing with procrastination, which is one of the biggest forms of resistance that any of us ever encounter. And if you want to dive more into how to beat procrastination and how to quite literally create motivation at will, go check out on my YouTube channel and make sure you subscribe. Cheap plug. Check out my video called Do Not Hustle, How to Game Your Mental Wiring to Find Motivation. And in there, I give you some practical steps and tactics on how you can create motivation in your head at will by simply gaming your mental hardwiring. So go check that out. Now, let's move on to our session number 2, where I really spoke about a concept called emergency scan modality. What that means is moving away from this high level vision that we have, right, down to our day to day. The reason why we can never actually move towards our vision, because in our day to day, what do? We wake up in the morning and we're looking for fires to put out. We're checking email first thing before we even get up out of bed. We're checking our texts. We're checking our Facebook. We're checking Twitter. We're checking everything, right? And even throughout the day, we're checking our inbox every 5 minutes, checking Facebook every 5 minutes. And we're always looking for those fires to put out, right? And unfortunately, this is what keeps us from our goal. That is what keeps us from really working on the important yet non-urgent things. And it keeps us working on the urgent but not very important things. And so we want to be able to get to the state of mind where we're much like a samurai who has purpose, singular purpose, has drive, willpower, but also has peace of mind, serenity. And so I spoke about how I use a project management methodology called GTD, Getting Things Done. And this is from the book by David Allen of the same name, Getting Things Done. And this is a task management / project management methodology that you use to in essence, manage all the tasks within your life. And so in that lesson, I talked about the philosophy behind it, the 5 steps on how to implement it, how to capture everything that has your attention, because quite frankly, your mind, as I spoke about in that last session, your mind is great for idea creation, but it is poor for idea storage. So it's much like the RAM memory on your computer. If you have too many programs open, too many things running, well, it really starts to bog down. So this is a way to get everything out. You know, the milk you have to pick up after work, to your kids' social studies homework you have to help her with, to the candidate you have to call back to prep, to checking your inbox, to handling this email, to et cetera, et cetera. It's quite literally everything in your life that's just rambling around your head that causes a lot of the stress. It causes this emergency scan modality, right, and keeps our focus on those non-important yet urgent things. So being able to put everything out into a system that you trust completely, it gets everything out of your head, and yet you know that it's going to be taken care of, right, in this workflow. So we talk about how to capture everything that has your attention. We talk about the GTD workflow itself. I also have had a workflow diagram showing you how you're going to manage all of these tasks and projects and information. And of course, how to do a weekly review and why that weekly review is so crucial to your success. So to recap, we have our first session here where we really spoke about that vision. And then we spoke about the GTD system, which is the day-to-day tasks. So think of your vision as your big rocks. Think of your GTD system as your small rocks. Now, there's a problem, however, because if you've got this vision for yourself that you have, and it might be a 5-year vision, 10-year vision, whatever it is, and you've got this system for managing everything. The problem is, well, how do I get it from one to the other? How do I go from my vision and figure out my goals? How do I select my goals? And then how do I plan everything and then get that into a system that I trust? This is where the 12-week year comes into play. Okay? Now, to better illustrate this, I'm going to have Top Gun star Tom Cruise help. So, in our first session, we talked about the 6 horizons of your life. This is what we call vertical planning. And this is as opposed to horizontal planning, which is your day-to-day tasks, etc. Okay? Vertical planning looks at the horizons of your life. And I talk about this in more detail in that first session, but just as a very quick recap, the runway level is your day-to-day. Your emails, your calls, your to-dos, your tasks. And if you were to quantify all the tasks and things that are usually left undone for most people, if you were to add everything up, you likely have between 300 to 500 hours worth. And this is really the cause of stress. And this is where things really break down for people because they can't manage that. And because they can't manage that, well, then they can't manage the next horizon, which is at 10,000 feet. This is your near-term projects, things that take more than one action. And if you were to add everything up, most of these things are not being taken care of. You've got about 30 to 100 active projects at any given time. Now, an active project might simply be something as simple as changing out the light in the dining room, because that does take a few separate actions, like going to Lowe's and buying a new light set. It involves then reading the instructions. It also involves shutting down the power in the dining room. It then involves taking down the current lighting system, and so on and so on, right? Also includes things like creating your own your new marketing PDF or new email campaign, or making changes to your website, or getting in shape, right? All these things that take more than one task. And again, most of these things aren't being done because of the breakdown at the runway level. Now, of course, you have 20,000 foot horizon, which is your areas of responsibility. Now, I spoke about this in when I talked about the Wheel of Life. So in our first session, and I'll go into a bit more detail here in a few minutes, we have areas of responsibility that include health or career or money, etc. Right? And so those areas of responsibility drive your near-term projects, which are made up of the tasks at your runway level. Now, you also have your 30,000 foot horizon. That is your 6 to 12 months desired outcomes. All right. So this is what you typically do when you create your yearly plan that you don't follow. And then at 40,000 foot, that's your 3 to 5 year goals and objectives. This really helps shape your personal and professional direction. You also have 50,000 feet, which is your life purpose or your life mission. And also keep in mind you can have more than one. I do, right? I've got a life purpose when it comes to my business and my coaching, but I also have a different one when it comes to, say, my legacy and with my children, for example, right? Or my health. Now, when you look at this at a high level, where this breaks down is at the first 3 horizons, right? From tasks to near-term projects to your areas of responsibility. This really should be able to be taken care of within the GTD system, right? This is your horizontal planning, right? This is, again, you need to have this in place, otherwise none of this will work, okay? Every piece is important. Now, your top 3 horizons would consist of your vision, right? And so as you're envisioning your next year, and then your next 5 years, and then your life, right? That will be your overall vision. And of course, what connects everything, what allows you to flow down from your vision through to GTD, is the 12-week year. So this provides the structure. And this really, I would call it the 3 legs of the table or of the stool. Without the vision, then you've got no direction. However, you can have vision, but if you don't have GTD, if you don't have some sort of project management system that you trust, then you'll get overrun with small tasks that are urgent yet not important, keeping you in constant emergency modality and always fighting fires and never actually getting any of your real work done, right? But then even if you have that, well, then there's nothing connecting your vision to your GTD, right? You need a system to take your overall vision and to translate that into manageable chunks, which will then populate your GTD system. That is the 12-week year, which is what we're teaching today. So when it comes to your 12-week year, here's what we're going to be covering. Now, I will tell you that the 12-week year, first off, is from the book by the same name by Brian Moran, and it talks about approaching goal setting really in a whole new way. And when it comes right down to it, having this vision is fantastic, right? Having your day-to-day workflow is fantastic. But what we're trying to do with this 12-week year is to fix the sticking point that most people have, in that they think they have to create a 1-year plan, but for many high performers, or for really almost everybody, the year context can be your barrier, because there's just too much distance between setting and accomplishing goals. It's really just too hard to see the finish line. Again, think about all the excitement you have at the end of a new year, and you're planning for the next year. And then what happens is that as you begin to creep into the next year, you forget about the past year, and you know, because again you're in planning mode, right? So you forget about the last year, you forget about your lack of progress, you forget about the failures, etc. Okay, you create this plan, and you start creeping into the new year, and 2 months, 3 months, 4 months in, that's when usually things fall apart, if not earlier. And then you just slog through the rest of the year, and then wash, rinse, repeat. So this fixes that. This takes, because again, that 1-year finish line is too distant. So this takes your year, breaks it up into 4 chunks. You have, in essence, 4 12-week periods. And so the 12-week period, in effect, acts as the year. And what that allows you to do is allows you to really break down these chunks, focus on 2 or 3 main things, and then you can hit the reset button every 12 weeks, which is huge. So the finish line is never too far away. And you don't need tons of goals. You quite literally can focus on 2 or 3 things in the quarter, get those handled, and then focus on other things, say, next quarter. And what happens because of this is you can start leveraging your focus to create long-term habits using a concept called periodization, which we'll talk about here a bit later. So this is what the 12-week year is good for. So the 12-week year, again, is a simple system, right, that will help you take massive action on your goals in a very short period of time, in 12 weeks. And as I mentioned, it's the conduit between your vision and your day-to-day work that it will take to accomplish that vision. So in this lesson, we'll talk a bit more about how to create a strong vision. So we're going to build a bit on what we spoke about in session 1. We'll talk about how to narrow your focus down to 2 to 3 goals for every 12-week period. And we'll talk about how to flow down into your weekly and daily planning. And then we'll take what you already have learned in session 2 about GTD, and we'll be able to craft a plan for you to make sure that you execute on that system. So we'll talk about what's called execution scoring, and using accountability to keep you on track day after day, week after week, and month after month. So with that said, let's talk about vision. Now, when it comes to vision, again, as I mentioned, for a lot of us, we think of vision as just this rah, sis kumbah, fluff, woo-woo bullshit, okay? And unfortunately, it does vision a disservice, because vision is actually quite important. I kind of liken it to meditation. You see, as a business person, I'm a bit of a no bullshit kind of guy. Now, with that said, when it comes to meditation, I always saw some value in meditation. However, being a no bullshit, not a woo woo kind of guy, and the fact that meditation really is sold as that, I saw I saw that there has to be value in it, but I never could see the value in doing it myself until I had a mentor really change my perspective on this. And he told me not to think of meditation as some way to find transcendence or nirvana or peace within, etc., or to be one with the universe. He said, "Yeah, screw all that. Whatever. That's great. That's great." But from a business perspective, there's almost nothing more important than focus. And what does meditation teach you? Meditation teaches you, really, it's more practice, but meditation allows you the practice of focus in a way it's like a muscle. And so that's when I really saw that's when the light bulb went off in my head. Oh, I get it now. So if I practice meditation 10 to 20 minutes every morning before I start my work for the day and just practice the singular art of just focus, singular focus. And although it might be hard at first, it's just constantly practicing. Then I take that same skill that I've practiced so much, and then as I work, I apply it. Singular focus, bam, right on task. And so that's when I realized the power of meditation. Much like I never really realized the power of vision until I was able to put together vision, the GTD system, my day to day, and the 12-week plan into one cohesive system. Then I realized, oh, okay, this is why vision's so important. So go rewatch, and this is on YouTube, the Zero to Hero Recruiter Productivity Training Session 1, or Part 1. And this is where I talk a bit more or more in depth on vision. In addition, if you want some additional information on that, you can go watch also on YouTube the Create Your 2019 Plan lesson. I came out with that at the beginning of the year, I believe in like January 2nd, and I talk about creating a yearly plan, and in that I talk quite a bit about your overall vision and mission and guiding principles. But ultimately, not to go too deep into how to create a vision for yourself, but I'm going to give you some additional tips that you can layer in on top of what I've already taught you. Ultimately, right, to give you some ideas on what that vision should be, right? You should always be thinking of your vision as something in the future, right? So you want to always be thinking of your vision in the future tense. You want it big and audacious. However, it should also be simple and specific. Also, your vision must be fluid and realize that it's not bound by the past. Okay? So, whatever you've done in the past, you shouldn't have to affect your vision for the future. Okay? We're not slaves to our past, right? But ultimately, your vision has to make you care. It has to give you that emotional leverage. Now, I spoke about this earlier, where I talked about how eventually, for a lot of us, year after year, we get so fed up. We either A, just give up altogether, which is really sad. But for many of us, and myself included, we get so fed the fuck up. It's like, we just like, something has to change. I can't keep doing the same thing year after year after year and keep expecting different results. So I've got to do something different, and that's what I'm showing you here. This is a different system that actually does work, but it does take a lot of work to set up. It's not easy, but that's where emotional leverage comes into play. You have to be so damn fed up of everything else that, you know what, I'm not going to let another year go by and waste it, right? So if you have that emotional leverage to really create a vision for yourself that you really truly care about, but have that emotional leverage to be able to see it through. This is what I'm giving you here today, right? The tools to use once you have that emotional leverage inside yourself. Now, when it comes to your vision, it's important that you also realize that your vision is really where you create reality, because in essence, whenever we create something twice, first in our mind and then in the physical world. And the vision that you have, and the reason why you really have to care, and the reason why you really have to have that emotional leverage, is that if it's strong enough, it'll help you overcome that inertia. It'll help you overcome that resistance. And if you shift from thinking of vision as just fluff and see it as the mother of all creation, and see how everything that we have in our life, from our iPhones to curing smallpox to the latest Tesla to us eventually settling Mars, whatever it is, right? To create literally the highlighter or the pen that you have in your hand while you're taking notes right now, that all started as a vision. Nothing we have today did not start off as somebody's or did not start off as somebody's vision. Excuse me, I'm getting tongue tied here, but you know what I mean. So that's why vision is so damn important, right? Your vision, in many ways, is the rudder, or going to be the rudder of your life. Now, I understand that writing a vision for yourself is quite hard. It's not easy. So, to give you some additional tips on being able to create a vision for yourself, I have some prompts that you can use. So, here are some overarching prompts for your overall vision for your life. So, for example, what is your, say, in 10 years or 20 years, what will your family look like, your health look like, what will your work like, what will your legacy be? What legacy do you want to leave behind? What are your secret passions? What makes you happy? What do you ultimately value? How do you measure success? How do you want people to remember you? What does your physical body look like in the future, right? What have you accomplished? What are your talents? What's special about you, etc. So anyway, read through this list when you get a chance. I'm not going to go over every single one here, but this should give you some ideas on how to overall figure out your vision. Now, beyond that, we also have to figure out our goals. Now, to figure out what goals you want in your life, again, go look at the Zero to Hero Recruiter Productivity Training Part 1. I talk about about the what's called the Wheel of Life. I talk about it there, and I also talk about it, I believe, in the Creating Your 2019 Plan. But your Wheel of Life really revolves around the 8 core areas, and of course it doesn't have to be 8. I have 8 here. It could be 10, it could be 12, but the core areas that we focus your life around. So these are different for everybody. For most people, it'll be about 80% commonalities, but for others, for example, like for me, spirituality isn't really a main focus of my life. For you, it may be, right? But for most of us, our core areas of life are going to be our physical environment, the house we live in, the cars we drive, etc., our work, money and finances, family and friends, romance and love, fun and recreation, health and fitness, personal growth. And again, yours can be different or very similar. But in essence, you have what's called a Wheel of Life. And so it's a good exercise to plot this out and ask yourself, when you look at this Wheel of Life in your mind, and think to yourself, okay, what would a successful you look like, right? If you could have everything you wanted in all these different core areas of your life, what would that look like, right? And then what you want to do is, and then realistically look at where you're at and say, okay, this is where I want to be, but where am I at really? And look at those lowest areas in the wheel, right? You may be a 10 in one area. Oh, that's very rare. You might be a 2 in another area. Okay, let's look at that 2. What can we do to improve that 2, right? And this is what's going to give you an idea of what you need to focus on your 12 weeks, because part of the idea behind this 12-week period is that we're going to focus on 2 or 3 core areas, because we want to be able to really focus in hard on that. And so this allows you to really sort of triage your life and decide, okay, what do I need to work on now? And then I get that handled, then what do I need to work on next? Now, the key here is don't try to spend all your energy in all areas too thinly. And that's what trips everybody up typically. You want to focus on 1 to 3 areas, or really 2 to 3 areas at any given time. I've got some additional prompts that you can use to really help you assess your wheel of life. Now, in all these areas, there are some common questions that you should be asking yourself, right? So, for example, if you were to sum up that area of your life and rate it between 1 to 10, what would that be? What's your current situation in that area? How do things stand now? Have you had any big milestones the last 12 weeks? Let's say you've already been doing these 12-week planning, sorry, so let's say you've already implemented the 12-week system into your life. Okay, looking at your past 12 weeks, any milestones that you've hit, any important events, what have you accomplished in the last 12 weeks? What have you failed on in the last 12 weeks? Strengths, weaknesses, etc. But in addition, there are some other areas or other questions you need to be asking yourself in each specific area of your life. Now, I have some examples here, but I'm also going to be dropping in the comments below a link to a download from Alex Vermeer's 8,760 Hours. It's a PDF on planning out your year. Now, he doesn't really talk about the 12-week plan in that PDF, but in that PDF, I find it very useful because it actually has a lot of these sorts of prompts for these specific areas of your life. And I believe in Alex's PDF, he talks about, I think, 13 or 14 different areas, right? So it should give you a lot of ideas. So here's some examples pulled from his PDF. This is on money. Do I have savings? How much? What type of savings? Do I have an emergency fund? How much? What's the status of my assets and investments? Do I know where my money is? What about the budget? What is my budget? Am I aware of how I spend my money? How do I want to be spending my money? Are my finances organized? Do I have any unwanted debt, etc.? Or health. What do I typically eat? What's my diet? Do I eat fast food or do I make healthy home-cooked meals? Am I generally tired or alert? How often do I get sick? Do I exercise? What type of exercise? How much do I sleep? How much do I weigh? Etc. And by the way, on a side note, many people don't realize how important your diet, as well as exercise and sleep, are to your productivity. It's simply garbage in, garbage out, and I'll probably do a session just on that alone. But quite simply, our outputs really depend on our inputs. And if our inputs are poor, well, then our outputs are also going to be quite poor. And so for a lot of folks who view productivity as simply grinding away, and if I need to get less sleep, then that's fine, I'll get less sleep, you're really missing the whole point, right? So anyway, those are some prompts on the health portion of your wheel of life. And again, I'll probably do some sort of lesson on this here in the future that's more focused specifically on that, because I really think it's important, and it's really missing from people's plans to be more productive. In fact, I got to tell you, one of the biggest productivity tips I ever give out is quite simply to stop drinking, or at least stop drinking during the week. Right? You will find you will be so much more productive if you quite literally just cut out that alone. It's quite amazing. So anyway, moving on. So some additional prompts that you can use for your career, let's say, or your business. Right? How do I make money? Right? What do you do? What type of recruiting that you do? Are you good at your job? Does your business or does your career give you mastery, control, and purpose of your life? Do you have a purpose at all? Are you your own boss? Are you independent? Or do you work for another agency? Are you a corporate recruiter? Are you engaged in what you do? Right? Do you really even like what you do? Are you proud of what you do? Or are you ashamed? Are you well positioned and networked? Right? How stressed are you? Or probably the most important question of all, have you joined David's 7-Figure Headhunter Accelerator yet? And if not, then what the hell? Like, really? I'm just saying, you better get on it. Anyway, I'm not going to give you all these prompts, but go download that PDF. In that PDF, you'll find, I think, 13 or 14 different areas of life that are listed as examples with prompts that are specific to each, in addition to the general prompts that I gave you before. So go check out that PDF. But by doing this, This is what gives you what's called situational awareness. Situational awareness is the ability to identify, process, and comprehend the critical elements and information about what is happening to you and around you. So this is important because for most of us, the reason why we can't really effectively create goals for ourselves is because we really don't have a handle on, let's say, money or the state of your career or health. Like we know generally speaking, but we really don't have a handle on it specifically. Now, when you first do this, it's very, very hard. But if you do this every quarter, it gets easier and easier and easier, right? But the first time is always the hardest. So again, for more prompts, check out that PDF and I'll put that down below. But if you are able to be situationally aware, what that gives us is the ability to do what's called dynamic steering. Now, dynamic steering is important because what that means is that it allows you to be able to drive down the track of your life, and you pretty much know where you're going. However, for most of us, we have to course correct along the way. So, dynamic steering just simply means the ability to be able to course correct, usually in 12-week increments. So for right now, focus on these 2 or 3 areas of your life, right? And then get that handled. Once you get that handled and set, move on to this area and then that area. And it also allows you to course correct along the way. There may be some problem areas that you didn't realize at the beginning of the year that you had, but you do realize later on. So then you can course correct as needed and create a 12-week plan around that weakness in your life. So that is what situational awareness gives you, the ability to dynamically steer. And being able to dynamically steer is what's going to give you the ability to really create intentional work-life imbalance. You see, I spoke about this in session 1, so if you haven't watched it yet, go and check that out. And in session 1, I spoke about the myth of work-life balance and that how it really doesn't exist, at least not the way that people think it does. Work-life balance doesn't really mean working 8 to 5 and then when you get home you forget about work. No, particularly if work is not going well, because areas of work that are underperforming will affect all other areas of your life and vice versa. So what happens is that if you can be situationally aware of what's going on in your life, it gives you the ability to take the steering wheel of your life and to dynamically steer. Because yes, while you may be on a track and in a lane, you need to be able to constantly course correct, because you know where you're going, but you know that the track is not going to be straight. You need to make micro adjustments. Sometimes you need to make macro adjustments. You're going back and forth, and that, quite frankly, is just life. You'll never have full balance in all the areas of your life or in your wheel of life. But if you take time to break everything down and then intentionally live your life imbalanced in some areas, right, it allows you the ability to really focus in and hone in on areas that you need improvement on, kick the can in other areas that where maybe you could just maintain for now, get those other things really handled, and then from there switch your focus onto other areas. And I'll talk a bit more about why we do that and the effect it will have on your life here in a bit. But this really is the heart of the 12-week year. So with that said, let's talk about implementing. What does implementing the 12-week year really look like? Well, the 12-week year uses a concept called periodization. And periodization is borrowed from the sports world. And this is where athletes will focus on a critical skill they want to develop over a specific length of time. You see, if an athlete focuses on all skills at all times, then they'll likely just be average. Now, of course, this is we're taking away talent out of this, right? Because quite frankly, I'm never going to be in the NBA, no matter how much I practice, and that's okay. But for most things, it doesn't take this that don't require me to be 6'2", with a huge vertical jump, right? But things that we can actually be excellent at, right? In order to do that, you need to be able to focus on critical skills. And so what athletes will do is they'll focus on some core critical skills intensely, until they become so ingrained inside of them that it can be done automatically. Once they get to that, like a certain level there, then they shift their focus to something else, and then they go, and then they'll maintain what they've learned, and then they put all their focus into another one or two core areas and develop that skill level there, right? So that is the concept of periodization, and that's what we're going to be doing here. And we're going to be breaking your year up into 12 weeks, because that's enough time to really get something big done, but it's short enough that you still have a sense of urgency and you can always see the end zone. So that's why it's important, as you break this up, this 12-week year, which a week is effectively a month, and then every day is going to be a week, right? That's how you want to be thinking about it. And what happens is that it allows you to take 2 or 3 goals that are concise and something that's realistic yet still a stretch. As long as they're specific, as long as they're measurable, it allows you to really create clarity around those goals and gives you enough of a runway to hit those goals. But again, it allows you to also see the finish line clearly, which is extremely important just for motivational purposes, right? So the 12-week plan is really going to include your vision, which really is the central lens of the whole system. Now, your goals are going to be connected to the vision, right? And within that, you're going to be breaking this up into the tactics, which will be the how behind the goals. So, how you're going to actually do the thing, right? Which it could be, if you're an agency, billing $150,000 in a quarter, which is a good number. Okay, how are you going to do that, right? Number of calls, number of interviews, number of new clients, job orders, etc., right? But in addition, we're also going to be looking at your routines, habits, and rituals. Now, this is the critical part, and this really is what makes this whole thing actually doable, right? Without the concept of habits, then this entire 12-week plan doesn't work. This is critical. You see, there's a saying that you can go a mile wide and an inch deep, or you can go a mile deep and an inch wide. Now, from a purely mathematical perspective, you're covering the same amount of ground, right? When you think about it. So, for a lot of folks, they say, well, what does it matter, right? Let me just focus on all the things at once. No, because by doing that, you never develop habits. You see, there's a thing called energy expenditure when it comes to productivity, right? We have a limited amount of energy that we can spend, right? So, if we're looking at the energy and time that we could put into something, for a lot of us, where these skills aren't ingrained, they're not habits, they're not instinct yet. It takes a lot of energy, both mental energy, maybe physical energy, maybe time, to do these things. And so by intentionally focusing for 12 weeks, what it does, it takes those things that take a lot of energy and mental willpower, etc., and turns them into habits, right? Because of our intense focus. And that's the key, right? That is your toehold, right? Once you get that toehold and you develop that instinct, that habit, then you can focus on the next thing. And now it doesn't take nearly as much energy to maintain that habit, right? Yet if you never focus on those things intently for that short period of time, the habit never gets built. That is why, even though you're expending the same amount of energy going a mile wide, an inch deep, versus an inch wide and a mile deep, but same energy either way, going a mile deep will get you much further over the long haul, because by doing that, it allows you to build those habits, and that is your superpower. So you want to be thinking about, okay, what habits am I forming during this time? And then, of course, as well, you have key actions, events, and milestones. So there are going to be things that don't require uh, the formative habits, right? So it could simply just be key actions. Um, so, for example, creating your new marketing PDF. You don't need a habit to do that. It's just a key action that needs to be done, right? And of course, you have milestones. Those are going to be some of your lagging indicators. So, for example, that could be reaching $100,000 in billing, or it could be losing those 20 pounds, etc. That's going to be a milestone. You will also want to plug this in there. Those, in essence, are your goals. Okay. Now, in addition, execution is a big part of this. And I take this quote from the 12-week year book itself. Our experience has shown that most people have the capacity to double or triple their income just by constantly playing with what they already know. And that is, again, execution. So we'll talk more about that here briefly on our next slide as we talk about how to execute the 12-week year plan, as well as your weekly reviews and your execution score. Okay. Now, in addition, it's important to have a weekly review. This is where you make an appointment for yourself to review your progress and clear all of your inboxes. This actually is part of the GTD system, which is one reason why it fits so well into the 12-week year system. And so you're going to make an appointment with yourself, again, to review your progress. And this also could include an accountability group as well, which I recommend. And really, your weekly review is where the week is won. Now, I do my weekly review on Sundays, as I think is probably the best day to do that. Now, we have football season starting here in America in just a couple of weeks, at least as of the time of this filming. Now, if you live in America, and for many of you folks who get really into football, right, whether it be professional football or maybe college football, so what happens? Your Sunday is spent with your buddies drinking and watching football all day. And so nothing really gets accomplished. Now, what would your life look like? How would your life be different if instead of that, you spent your Sunday gearing up for the week, right? Because this is where the week is won. Now, again, for those of you folks who don't want to give that up, I get that. But sometimes you do need that temporary work-life imbalance intentionally in order to really make dramatic progress towards your goals. So with that said, you can also go watch football after. Maybe wake up early on Sunday. Go to bed early Saturday night so you wake up early Sunday so you can get all that done. So by the time football rolls around, you've earned that time, right? But earn that time. And this is what really is going to separate out the winners from the losers. Because for most of us, unfortunately, no matter how bad we say we want something, we're not willing to give up things in our life in order to get there, right? It's a reason why people can't lose weight, because they as much as they want to lose weight and as much as it pains them to be overweight and maybe to feel unattractive or to feel unhealthy, but they're not willing to give up pizza or their nightly ice cream or beers with their buddies, right? Or maybe they're willing to give it up when they're looking in the mirror, but when it comes right down to it, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and they've got the munchies, and they look in their fridge for that pint of Ben and Jerry's, at that moment they're not willing to give that up because they want that simple mouth pleasure, right? Same reason why many of us aren't willing to give up our shows and going to bed late, because we feel we need that time to decompress. When in reality, we wouldn't be as stressed out and we wouldn't need that decompression time if we went to bed early, got up earlier, got more work done, and actually accomplished a lot of our goals. And then what you would find is that you really don't need to decompress as much because you're really not that stressed out. You actually feel great and you feel on purpose. But people aren't willing to give that up, even for a short period of time. And that's why I believe it's important in this weekly review. Think to yourself, are there things I need to give up? Do I need to give up football? Or do I need to give up going out late staying up late on Saturday night so I can wake up early enough on Sunday to be able to do that so I can earn my football time with my buddies, right? You have to be thinking along those lines. So let's talk about execution. Execution is quite important. Now, um, when you have your goals, right? You've got this goals that you're trying to translate into a plan. What's really going to be stopping you is, bottom line, is execution. You've got to figure out how you're going to execute this for yourself, because winning is really executing on the right things, not getting more done, because you'll honestly, you don't have more time in the week, really. But you have to work smarter and sometimes harder, right? But you have to be intentional. And that's what the plan helps you do, right? So I'm going to show you a simple PDF that will walk you through how to plan out your 12-week year. Now, I'm assuming you've already picked out your top 2 to 3 focus areas from your real life life that you're going to be focusing on for this quarter. And again, that could be career, it could be your children, it could be relationships, okay? Or it's simply, or your aspects of your career could really flow through every quarter, right? You can have a billing goal every quarter. That's certainly fine as well. But I'm going to show you a PDF on how you can plan that. So bear with me. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So this actually is pulled directly from the 12-week year, and this is a planning worksheet. So I will drop the link to download that in the comments below. But when you look at this really just kind of walks you through how to create a plan for yourself. And it's actually really quite simple. It's really not hard at all. But I want to zoom in on this so you can see what a very simple 12-week year plan would look like. So here, for this next 12 weeks, his plan is to close $105,000 in new business, lose 10 pounds, improve his relationship with Carol, I'm assuming his wife. And so within this first goal, close $105,000 in new business, he has really written down some of the key actions and habits he needs to form, right? So here, call a minimum of 5 in profile prospects per week to schedule meetings. So all these different activities and leading indicators of things he needs to get done, right? Maybe his metrics, etc., as well as key actions. And then, of course, habits he needs to form as well. Now, here, and lose 10 pounds, same thing, right? He has, of course, he can include due dates. He can say, I want to begin this in week 2 or week 1, or I want to actually begin this week 6, what's going to be the end week, etc. And of course, this worksheet will walk you through how to plan. So it's really pretty simple, right? So I'm not going to dwell on this too long, but I will include, again, that worksheet here in the comments below. All right, so once you plan out your first 12-week year, then it's time to really plug that 12-week year into your GTD system. Now, I spoke about this in session 2, where I really showed that workflow diagram of as things flow into your life, where they should be partitioned out to, right, in terms of projects. Now, I use OmniFocus to manage my GTD system. For a lot of folks, they use Asana. That's another great one to use. Especially because OmniFocus really is on the Mac platform only. If you have PC, you can't use it. But Asana is also a great system as well. I just like OmniFocus personally. But so what happens is every week, well, really every few days, but really every week, primarily, I clear all my inboxes. So all these things that came into my head, all the ideas and tasks, everything from picking up light bulbs at the store to painting my house to increasing my sales and to creating the market ecosystem and getting this email system together and getting my new website and moving over to a new ATS and all these different things I need to get done, right? They all flow into my inbox so that they can be out of my head. So, and that's a huge stress relief just in that alone. Goes into my system. Every week I put all those different, if it's a big big task, I break that up into smaller tasks and make that into a small project. And I also move things into different areas of life. So for every area of my life, I have within OmniFocus or within the GTD system overall, I have an overall project. So I've got a project folder for my children, another one for my social life, another one for business, and within that it's broken up into my coaching practice and then my recruiting practice. So I've got those two. Health, finances, personal systems, etc. Again, that should flow. That should really follow what your own wheel of life is, right? So you create those folders, those overall projects, and those tasks go into those projects. Now, for those of you who say, well, David, aren't you only supposed to be focusing on 2 or 3 main things? Yes, but at the end of the day, you still need to take care of your personal finances. You still have to pay your bills. You still have to, go to the gym, even if you're not focusing on health that quarter. It doesn't mean you're not focusing on anything else at all, right? Or at least not doing anything. You're in what's called maintenance mode. So what happens is that as you start planning out your week, those 2 or 3 focus areas become your priority. So if something has to be moved, then it's going to move, right? Move those things that have to be moved in service of your 2 to 3 focus areas goals. Those take priority, okay? So that's what I mean by keeping everything else in maintenance mode. But on those 2 or 3 core areas, which again, for that quarter might be billings. So for example, for me, it might be a billing goal in this 12-week cycle for the Kineta group, okay? Or it might be, I'm actually right now working on a new course I'm releasing that's going to be a bit of a lower level course than Accelerator for more mass recruiters. I need to finish that in my next 12-week cycle. So that's going to be one of my priority goals, right? My next quarter after that, it might be more of a health-related goal, right? So again, it doesn't mean I won't work out during that time I'm in course content creation, but course content creation takes priority, okay? So what you'll do is you'll plug this into your GTD system, and you want to set up a weekly review. Now, this comes back down to execution because remember, it's not that we have a knowledge problem. It's that we have an execution problem. Just these 3 sessions alone. Now, I'm going to release more productivity sessions ongoing in the future, but just these 3 sessions alone, how to create that vision for yourself and the wheel of life, and then how to use GTD, and then how to tie everything together with a 12-week year. These 3 here are really all that you need in order to massively increase your productivity. You don't need to watch yet another productivity course or yet another productivity video because that, in essence, is a form of escapism, right? You feel like you're getting something done, but you're not. It's the reason why people buy 6 different weight loss programs yet never lose the weight because every time they buy it, and watch some of the videos, they feel like they're getting something done. But in reality, they're not. They're escaping. And so it really comes down to execution. It really comes down to rolling up your sleeves and getting to work. And that is the single biggest differentiator. And so this starts, again, with that weekly plan where you'll review your vision, you'll review your goals, review your plan, you'll clear all of your inboxes, you're going to identify all the habits you need to focus on for the next week, the milestones you need to hit, and then when you plan like this, you know exactly what needs to be done, and either you do it or you don't. It's simply a binary yes or no. And so that comes into tracking because we're using indicators, both leading and lagging indicators to track your success. So there's really 2 types of indicators. There is a leading indicator, which really comprises of your metrics and key actions that determine whether or not you will hit your goal. And then we measure this with an execution score. And then we have a lagging indicator. This is your performance over time as you move to hit your milestones. See, your leading indicators are what winners focus on, okay? Unfortunately, for most people, they focus on lagging indicators. What does that mean? Well, Your billings is one. Focusing on what you build for the month or for the quarter is good in a review context, but does nothing for you as you progress through your quarter at all. Your leading indicators are things such as your call activity, or how many times you're making offers of your higher level or sorry, making higher level offers, or it could be just the key action of creating a higher level offer. Or if you don't know how to do that, the key action quite simply could be booking a call with me to talk about getting you into Accelerator so you can then learn how to create a higher level offer and create a marketing ecosystem, etc. Right? So those something like that is a leading indicator, right? Because that will lead to success. But looking at your past billings is a lagging indicator. But unfortunately, most people focus too much on lagging indicators and not as much on leading indicators. And again, whether you execute or not is simply a binary, a yes or no. So we're going to show you what's called an execution score, and I'll show you an Excel spreadsheet for this here in a moment that will track this. And this is what's going to be very useful for you to be able to, well, not only track your progress on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis, but also would allow someone else to help keep you accountable if you do decide to join an accountability group to make sure that you stay on track and keep yourself in check. Now, both are important. Lagging indicators are important from a review context, but again, it's only for review every quarter. But really, during that time when you're executing, it's all about leading indicators. So in order to actually track, you'll use this simple spreadsheet. And I'm going to pull this up right now. Okay, so this is the execution score worksheet. It's really quite simple. So every every week is broken down by day, as you can see here. And I've got, let's see, 12 weeks, right? So all you simply need to do is at the end of the day, decide, did I accomplish all the tasks that I needed to get done today to help me reach my focus areas of or my 2 to 3 focus area goals? Yes or no? If it's a yes, put a yes. And as you can see here, it changes my percentage to 100% because I had one day and that one day was a success. Let's say the next day and the next day, and then I hit a snag and I get no. Now I'm at 75% and another no. Right? Now I'm down to 60%, so I got to try to get that back up. And so the goal is really to set some sort of standard for yourself for a percentage to hit. You're not going to be at 100%, right? It's going to be very rare. But try to be at 90%, 95%, etc. And so you really need to work hard, and it provides a lot of that visual motivation, which is important because, again, it's really easy for us to create plans and decide, we're going to be doing this and 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 really pumping ourselves up and being unrealistic. We have to realize that we're humans and we have needs and wants and desires, and just in our limbic system, desires things like sex, food, calories, pleasure, entertainment, right? So we need to be able to fight against that. So you need to be able to game your own mental hardwiring, which this helps to do, because especially if you include accountability, which we'll talk about that here in a few, but if you include accountability in this system, an execution score is really quite important, because this is what allows your accountability partners to, well, help keep you accountable. All right. So I'll drop the link for this down below as well. Now, in order to make sure you are effectively executing, there is a concept that the book calls performance time. I call it time blocking, so call it whatever you want. But it's a strategy that you can use to make sure that you're effectively executing day by day and working on the important things. So in the 12-week year book, Brian Moran breaks this down into 3 specific time blocks. Now, the first time block is your strategic blocks. Now, this is for the important and the non urgent work that is critical that you stay on track with. So, for example, most of our days are spent, as I mentioned before, in what's called emergency scan modality. So that's checking your inbox, checking Facebook, checking Instagram, checking YouTube, watching YouTube videos, um, uh, listening to the news every chance you get. All these little things that seem urgent, that seem important, but they're not really important. Is it important that you listen to the news right when you wake up, or that you check your email before you even get up out of bed? It'll still be there, but it saps your energy. You see, there's a thing that I call deep work. Now, they don't really talk about this a lot in the 12-week year book, which, on a little side note, that's why I believe it's important to not to look at any one book, or any one system, but to create a system that works seamlessly, right? So, for example, GTD is great, but doesn't really, and GTD does talk about these 6 horizons of life. In fact, that's where I got that concept, but doesn't really have a great system for taking that and translating that into your GTD system, right? There's a big gap there. The 12-week year really fills that gap. Now, the 12-week year doesn't really do a great job of talking about your day to day, right? That's what GTD is for. In addition, neither book really talks about the concept of energy management as much as it should. So that's why I believe you want to drink water from several wells, right? Not just one. So, anyway, back on track here. So, when it comes to energy and energy management, and this is where time blocking is so important. You see, you have a finite amount of energy per day. It resets when you wake up, or actually, technically resets when you sleep, which is why sleep is so important, by the way. If you don't get a full 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep, meaning you don't get enough REM sleep cycles, well, you're starting off the day not filled to the brim with energy, right? You're not topped completely off. You're starting off at 70%, 80%. I mean, again, it's why you have to think holistically about this, about all of your inputs. If you go out with your buddies and drink on a Wednesday night, out till midnight or 12:30, and come home, you're already half buzzed. You got alcohol in you, which actually disturbs your REM sleep, and you wake up the next day. You won't be fully charged, and you're going to be down all day. It doesn't matter how much willpower you have. You're not going to be at full capacity. Or let's say you're not going out, but you decide to smoke weed and binge watch Game of Thrones. Okay? Even then, that can also affect your REM sleep, which again affects performance the next day. Okay? So it's all garbage in, garbage out. So when it comes to your energy, you've got a finite amount of energy throughout the day. Now, what trips most people up, and the reason why there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who want to write the next great American novel, or start a business, or start some sort of venture, and they think, well, I'm going to go into work, do all my work-related things, get all that shit done, come home, and at night after the kids are in bed, if I spend 1 hour a night working on this thing, then I'll be able to accomplish, I'll be able to write that novel, I'll be able to start that business, create that business plan, whatever it is, okay? Learn that language, right? Whatever your goal is. But the problem is, you wake up in the morning, you're not at 100% because you stayed up late the night before, you had a few drinks, or you smoked a bowl. Then, what happens? You wake up, the alarm clock wakes you up, and what do? You lose the first battle of the day by hitting the snooze button, right? The very first decision you make is a loss right away, right? So you finally get up out of bed, you have to rush to get into the shower, you don't have time to make the bed, you rush to get to work through rush hour traffic, and during that time you're listening to news, you're listening to YouTube, you're listening about the latest shooting, you are listening to the local shock jock radio station hour on the way to work. And every single piece of information that gets into your head is sapping that energy. Then you get into work, you're at the water cooler, you're talking about Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or whatever new show is on Netflix. Narcos, by the way, great show. So it's one that I've been watching here recently. Uh, so you talk about that, having coffee with your buddy. You finally start working. You get your work done, right? But most of your energy is spent all day checking your inbox, checking your Facebook, putting out fires, right? Letting your day plan you, not planning your day. Okay. Then you get home after fighting rush hour traffic and then picking up the kids. But then you finally get home, you make dinner, deal with all that crap. Have to hear about what your spouse is doing with his day or her day. And then after the kids are in bed and it's time to get down to work, you've got no energy. You get no mental bandwidth at all. And to expect yourself to sit down and do that deep work is just simply unrealistic, no matter how much willpower you have. And if you were able to once in a while do it, you won't be at full capacity. You won't be able to really create the work that you really are truly capable of. Okay? So that's why you have to think about those things and think, okay, strategically, when do I need to get the most important and non-urgent work done? And what I mean by non-urgent, right? You should be able to take care of the work that's important before it gets urgent, right? By the time it gets urgent, it's too late. So this is your deep work. Now, so it's important that you block this time off. And so typically my recommendation is to take care of these things first thing in the morning. Now, for those folks who say, well, David, I'm more creative at night. Well, I hear what you're saying, and I hear some people say that, and it can make sense, but it doesn't change the fact that your energy is also sapped. It's just a biological reality, right? And so just because you're creative at night, consider the possibility that maybe you're saying that because you're in a rut, not a rut, but a groove. You're in a groove that's been that you've been traveling for years and years and years and years, where you are a night person. You stay up late. You're creative at night. But there's also the reason why 7 nights out of the week, of those 7 nights, you only do creative work maybe once, maybe twice, right? Even though it's your creative time, because you don't have the energy to actually do it, right? So consider the possibility of slowly moving over to being a morning person, okay? And to taking care of those things first thing in the morning. And if you do that, you'll find that you'll be able to consistently be able to take care of those big non-urgent, those big rocks of your life more consistently and with more creativity. Because when it comes right down to it, people aren't born morning people or night people. They're not born that way, but they become that way because they're on a groove. So it's important for you to recognize where your grooves are and realize all a groove is just a life groove. You can change the groove, right? Some people develop the ability early to do that, which is a groove in and of itself. Some people don't, but it's never too late, right? So anyway, so that's a strategic block. So typically, take a block of time, an hour, 2 hours, etc. Although it's important to have little breaks in there as well, because we tend to lose focus, and take care of those tasks that are required in your 2 or 3 main areas of focus and get those done early. And then, of course, schedule everything else that really is more habit and routine, etc. That's easy to do for later in the day. So that's a strategic block. Now, a buffer block is also very, very important. That's all the low value work that still has to be done. You know, checking your inbox 100 times a day isn't necessary. But checking your inbox still is necessary. It's still important for you to clear your inbox and check and reply to things in a timely manner. So batch that work, right? Check your inbox maybe 3 or 4 times a day. Check it once in the morning, once at noon, etc., and batch that with other non-important yet urgent work. If you don't do this, it is a productivity killer. It's nothing new when I say that multitasking is a myth, and I'm sure we've all heard this before in other training sessions, where you hear that in reality, what you do is switch task. You go from task to task to task. It disrupts mental bandwidth and takes energy just to switch. And consistently doing that over and over, right, kills your productivity. What really did it for me was I had a mentor tell me this. It's also not just about energy expenditure, but bottom line, switch tasking, doing more than one thing at once, literally makes you dumb. It literally makes you dumb, right? And that's what did it for me. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, in my sense, and what really got me thinking about multitasking, right? Because I preached that you should never multitask, yet I always multitask myself until I realized I had that insight, right? When that my mentor told me, you're making yourself dumb every time you multitask. Okay, so it's important, even if you feel like you can multitask. For example, you're watching a training video on something, and think, well, maybe I'll watch this training video, but I'm gonna respond to some emails simultaneously to knock that out at the same time. Then you're not going to retain what you're trying to learn, right? So it's important that you create these buffer blocks for yourself throughout your day to take care of all those low value work activities. And then lastly is a breakout block. That is a planned time to recharge your batteries during working hours. So that can mean taking an hour walk in the park. It can mean even just shorter breaks, right? Getting some sun on your face, going and golfing on a Friday afternoon. You don't need very many of these things, but it is important to help recharge yourself and not just recharge yourself in your downtime. It's important to also recharge yourself during your uptime as well. And if you plan these out strategically, you'll find that your productivity overall will improve dramatically. So that's the concept of time blocking, or performance time as it's called in the book. And the last area, and also one of the most important areas that will make sure that you do execute at a high level consistently, is accountability. Accountability just makes sure your shit gets done. Now, there are a few ways where you can try to hold yourself accountable. And that would be a mastermind group, which we'll talk about that in a moment, journaling, as well as the 90-day letter. Now, what really opened my eyes to this whole thing was a article in Fast Company, and I'll drop the link down below as well. And the article was called Change or Die. And it talked about some studies that were done where they tried to change people's behavior. And it was behavior related around specifically their health. And they were told that if they didn't change certain behavior, they were going to die. And this is actually true. This is, was medical fact, right? That they had a change of behavior or they were going to die. And it wasn't just a faraway death, it was an imminent death. And they found that they had a 90% failure rate, even when death was, the main motivator, right, to change. Even with death, they had a 90% failure rate. But they had another group where they instituted an accountability system. And in that group, they had an 80% success rate. Right? A 90% failure rate to an 80% success rate. I don't know about you, but a 90% failure rate, I don't like those odds. I'll take the 80% success rate any day. And it's weird in how oftentimes people hold accountability in higher regard than avoiding death, right? So if that's the case, well, let's game our own mental hardwiring. So that's where accountability comes in. So if you go and try to do it yourself because you don't really, people oftentimes will not tell others about their goals or not try to be held accountable because they really don't believe they can do it. And you're starting off already losing, right? You're starting off already knowing, you're hedging your bets, basically. You're not betting to win. And when you hedge your bet, when you're betting to lose, then you're going to lose. So including accountability is important. In essence, you got to put up, right? Put up or shut up. And if you're not putting yourself out there to hold yourself accountable because you think you might fail, well, then you've already failed. So the first accountability measure you could take is a mastermind group. And this is a group that you should meet with every week. Usually somebody's also going working on their own 12-week plan as well, ideally. It also should not be a large group, 4, 5, or 10. Completely unrealistic. Mastermind groups really top out at 3, maybe 4. After that, it gets really unwieldy. I've been in a mastermind group now for years, for probably about, I want to say, 10 years now, 9, 10 years. And so, and this mastermind group started off with 3 people, although it's down to 2. We've tried to maintain a third. We've had some people come in and out, but unfortunately we haven't. So it's really just been myself and my best friend, Ryan. And he didn't start off as my best friend, but he ended up becoming that because he knows more about me than I think anybody does, right? Probably even Elisa, because he's in my mastermind group. That's how important it is. And it's been a main reason for my success because he keeps me in check, right? And he makes sure my shit gets done. And he makes sure I stay on track. And if I don't, he gets on my ass for it. And if I succeed, he celebrates, right? And so, and because that relationship that has really deepened because of this mastermind group, right? I was the best man at his wedding. He'll be the best man at mine. It's because, and that's how important a mastermind group is, right? Now, you can always have a short-term mastermind group, and it's certainly fine. But I would challenge you to find somebody for the long term. It's hard to find, to be fair. Hard to find, but if you can find someone like that, it is invaluable. Invaluable. So, a mastermind group, and that's where an execution score sheet can really help. Now, journaling is another way to keep yourself in check. So, journaling is kind of like a self-directed mastermind or solo mastermind, if you will. But it's a powerful self-reflection technique that provides like a touchstone to reality and helps keep you in check on how you're working on your plan. So the reason why journaling is so important is think about this. Think about what you had for lunch a month ago, or even 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago today, what did you have for lunch? You probably have no idea, right? What'd you do that day? Probably have no idea, right? Because every day kind of just bleeds into the next, and it just blurs, right? Your life is just kind of a blur over time. And so what it allows you to do, it allows you every day you're going to focus. What did I do today? What were my goals? What did I succeed at? What did I fail at? What did I learn? What were some of my insights? Right? How do I feel? And it's really amazing if you could do this, how much clarity it brings on a day-to-day basis. And it's also really fun and also and very instructive to be able to go back a few years. I started journaling probably about 5, 6 years ago on a regular basis, and I've had gaps, of course. We're not perfect, but to be able to go back and look at what I've written 4 years ago or 3 years ago, it's almost like another person wrote. It's really quite amazing, but it's really a glimpse into my past self, and I could see where I've grown, and I could see where I've maybe fallen short. It's really an amazing tool. So I really recommend journaling. It's not just for preteen girls writing in their diary, okay? But it is important to keep a journal, and you could do one online. I use one called Day One, which is on my phone, it's on my iPad, it's on my MacBook. So it's what I use to journal with, and it also allows me to attach pictures and files, etc. And it's a lot easier for me than just trying to write something out. It's also searchable, etc. So that's journaling. In addition, the 90-day letter. Now this also fits in perfect with the 12-week plan. He doesn't really talk about that in the book. That's why, again, I really recommend looking at different sources and piecing something together for yourself, like what I'm doing here for you. But a 90-day letter is simply this. You write a letter to yourself, handwrite it, sign it, and seal it. And this is a letter to your future self. Remember how I said your days kind of blur into each other. But in addition, you also become a different person over time. Who you are now is not the same person you were 90 days ago. Who you will be in 90 days from now is not the same person that you are today. So this is a letter that you write about your 12-week plan, and what you plan to accomplish, and you're writing that to your future self, saying, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do, right? And you actually write it as if it's to a different version of you 90 days from now and what you will become. And then you seal it and then keep it somewhere where you can see it on a regular basis, because you know you'll have to open that. And when you open it, you break that seal and open it, you're either going to be very ashamed or very proud, usually a mix of the two. But it is a very important tool and helps, again, game your own mental hardwiring. Because just trying to do all this by sheer willpower alone will not work. So these are tools that you can use to hold yourself accountable. So you have a mastermind group where you're using others to hold you accountable, journaling where you're using yourself to keep yourself accountable, and the 90-day letter is your future self is keeping you accountable, right? And if you do all these three things, you're in essence stacking the odds in your favor. So this is how you execute on your 12-week year plan. But there are things you need to watch out for, things that really will sabotage. And really, emotions comes down to self-sabotage, because our biggest enemy is looking at us in the mirror. Much like Captain Kirk here, right? You know, most of us spend our lives just hitting ourselves and damaging ourselves. And, you know, all of us have suffered some sort of self-sabotage, right? None of us are immune. So I want to show you some different points of failure on the 12-week plan that I want you to try to avoid at all times. So when you look at a point of failure in a system, right? Sometimes you can have a single point of failure that when that happens, it corrupts and really destroys the entire system itself. And so you need to know, if you have a system running, you need to know where the single points of failure are and monitor them at all times. Because if you don't monitor them, that's when shit goes sideways. So, points of failure. Number one is not having a strong enough why. Right? So this comes down to not having enough emotional leverage. So if you don't feel you have enough emotional leverage, right, then it might be important for you to go back and write out why you're frustrated, how you're frustrated, right, or make a video on it. Whatever you have to do, but if you have negative emotion, use it. So find a way to gain emotional leverage, right? And again, having a strong why is important. Very important. That's the positive piece of it. But don't forget the negative side as well. The negative side can be an ally if you use it correctly, okay? So, and again, keep in mind, in all these things here, notice here I say you choose, because this is your choice. If this point of failure if the single point of failure is the reason why your system collapses, it is something usually of your own doing. So as you can see the theme here. All right, so secondly, not correctly managing your downsides. There's infinitely more profit to be had in managing your downsides than just in focusing on your upsides. Now, I hear some people talk, like Gary Vee, for example, which I love Gary Vee, but he talks about focus on your strengths, and that's important. It is important to focus and double down on your strengths. But one thing that people don't realize is that you have a huge downside, right? And if you focus solely on your strengths, but don't actively work to shore up those areas that are weak, will inevitably cause your system to fail, right? No matter what your strengths are. For an example, your downside could simply be things such as hitting that snooze button, right? That's a downside because that's the first decision of the day. You don't want it to be a failure. You want it to be a success, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, get out of bed, right? Something as simple as that. It could be the inputs that you're putting into your body, the diet, the sleep, excessive drinking. It could be the things you're allowing in your head. If you're constantly on YouTube and news and succumbing to this kind of outrage media that we see every day, okay? Because that's addictive. That's a downside. You need to effectively manage that, because if you don't manage your downsides, it will almost always destroy your upsides. And so the true winners in life have figured out how to correctly manage those downsides so they don't get in the way of the upsides. The upsides are much higher when you've been able to manage those downsides. So that's very important to realize. And I've got a video on that as well on my YouTube channel. Not eliminating distractions. This really goes hand in hand with managing your downsides. It also relates to energy management. Distractions. If you're trying to focus, the key to learning how to focus is not by focusing, it's actually eliminating distractions. So, this is one thing that I've had to do recently, because this is an area where I had a crack in my system. So, I was watching too much news, too many YouTube videos. Every time I'd wake up, AirPods in my ears, listening to YouTube, videos on this, videos on the shooting, or this and that, and so it was so much. It was too much. Every time I go to the bathroom, AirPods in, listening to something. Every time I'm responding to emails, I've got a podcast going, or this or that, and it's just too much. And every piece of information I'm taking in is sucking away a piece of energy. And so what I've had to do, or relearn, was to really clear that out. And so now, in fact, if you see me a little bit less on social media, it's because I block that out. So for big blocks of time, I don't check Facebook, even though for my coaching business, it's a big part of my business. I've had to cut a lot of that out. I'm not listening to news anymore, except maybe at night if I earn the time. But in the morning, it's classical music, maybe some ambient music, right? But something usually classical, light music that's relaxing, allows me to really focus, okay? Then I meditate. Again, practice focus techniques, and then it's time to do my deep work. And it's been refreshing, I got to tell you. So eliminate distractions. Another one is not managing your energy. It goes hand in hand with eliminating distractions. The key is not time management, guys. It's energy management, and knowing that you have a finite amount throughout the day and it resets as you sleep. So make sure you get a full night of sleep. It's well rested, well fed, well hydrated. Okay, so that way you start off the day with max amount of energy, mental willpower, and creativity, and then manage it wisely throughout the day, so you're not running on fumes by mid-afternoon. Okay, so energy management is important. Also, knowing that you can't change everything at once. As I said before, you can go a mile wide and an inch deep, or an inch wide and a mile deep. Same amount of area you're covering, but going an inch wide and a mile deep is what's going to create habits that allows you to then maintain and not spend enough as much energy to maintain, right? And then you can go work on creating new habits. So that is the power behind that focus, right? So not changing everything at once. It's important that you really focus on 2 or 3 things max, right? Get those handled and then focus on the others. Next point of failure is not tracking your actions. So what is not measured does not get improved. It's important that you track your actions. Keep score if you need to, but it's a way for us to be able to, again, game our own mental hardwiring. Because if we're not tracking these things, then we have no idea if we're going to actually succeed. We have no idea if we're on track to hit our goals. And if we don't have any idea if we're on track to hit our goals, then we'll quickly either get bored or forget about our goals or get sucked into the day-to-day. And the next thing you know, we're facing another year where we got nothing done, right? And then every year drags on into the next year, etc. And that's a wasted life. So tracking your actions is important. Also, focusing too much on lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are important, but they just tell you how you did. It's too late to change the past. So lagging indicators are important from a review perspective, but during your 12-week year, you need to focus on leading indicators. In addition, not creating habits and rituals is another point of failure. You're always building habits either by intention or by accident. So you need to be consciously thinking about what habits am I creating during this 12-week period that once I create this habit and I maintain it will help me get to my overall goals, right? If you don't work on creating those habits, then once you crack into your next 12-week session, you won't be able to maintain what you've been able to win in your prior 12-week session. So I'll probably create another training session on habit creation and rituals. So I won't go too deep on it here, but just know that creating habits and rituals is very important. Also, not relying and trusting in your GTD system. Remember, your brain is the worst task manager ever made. So it's important that you have a task manager, GTD, that you can trust and rely on. And lastly, going it alone. People go it alone because, well, frankly, they're afraid of being vulnerable. They know they probably won't succeed, so they don't want to feel embarrassed, or they don't want to put themselves out there, or they don't want to be the tall poppy. If you ever heard of the tall poppy syndrome, where you have a field of poppy all the same height, the one tall poppy grows tall and it gets clipped. People are afraid to be the tall poppy, but you have to be willing to put yourself out there. So going it alone is a big point of failure. Not having that accountability is you're going to guarantee your failure. So never go it alone. And that is the 12-week year. And if you can do that, right, if you can create that vision and then flow that through into figuring out, okay, what is your wheel of life in these different areas of responsibility, right? And then from there, you could pick out the important things to focus on right now and chunk that out and then create a plan. Flow that into your 12-week year plan. And from there, plug that into your GTD system. Create systems for yourself to execute, a weekly review, some accountability. Make sure your inputs are good. Make sure you're eating healthy, sleeping well, being hydrated, drinking to a minimum, keeping a clear, focused mind. There's nothing you can't accomplish, right? So with that said, the 12-week year, if you can combine this with having that strong vision and a strong GTD system to back everything up, right, to handle that day to day, you, my friend, will succeed beyond your wildest dreams. And that concludes today's training on the 12-week year, Tom Cruise edition. Hey recruiters, thank you for watching today's lesson. And believe me, it is a long one. I get that. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And I also appreciate you allowing me to indulge myself with a little Tom Cruise Top Gun action in there. You can tell I'm a bit of a Top Gun fanboy. But with all that being said, in all seriousness, take these lessons to heart. These 3 lessons I mentioned here, right? This session and the prior 2 should form the basis of your core productivity systems, right? I've given you the tools. Now you just need to find the emotional leverage in yourself to get past this hump, because it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy at all. But you've got to do it. You've got to do it. Otherwise, this year will be like last year, will be like the year before, and the year before, until the day you die, right? And I don't want that for you. So if you want it bad enough, I've given you the tools and the roadmap to get there. Now it's just up to you to basically belly up to the bar and make it happen. So with that said, enjoy this lesson, and I will have additional lessons coming up as well, so be on the lookout for those. In addition, and this is my cheap plug time, I have some additional resources for you. So click down below, you will see a 45-page guide on social media recruitment, social media marketing, as well as how to design a higher level offer. It's called the Lighthouse Method, so check that out. That's down below. It's a free guide. In addition, I have a free training available. It's on-demand training. It is the 5 new model principles on how to scale a 7-figure recruitment practice. So that is also down below. And in addition, if you're interested in joining my accelerator program is my higher level training program for independent recruiters and small search firm owners on how to craft a higher level offer, how to sell it and how to build a marketing ecosystem around it. So to your prospects and the clients you want to work with and the candidates you want to work with, I show you how to, in essence, how to create messaging and an offer that will blow your competitors away, and how to be omnipresent to them, right, around this digital landscape. In essence, I show you how to basically climb the mountain that is your niche, and get on the top, plant your flag, and own it and defend it like hell against all comers. And I'll show you exactly how to do that in the accelerator. So down below, you'll find a link to book a call with either myself or one of my team members. Now, there is a questionnaire after you book a call. If you don't fill out the questionnaire, we will be canceling the call. I just have that there to make sure that we're not wasting your time, that you're not wasting our time. We want to make sure that whoever we talk to is a serious contender. So with that being said, folks, I really appreciate you watching this video and taking the time, and I'm looking forward to more in the future. And please like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. And with that being said, folks, happy hunting. Peace.